Today, you'll meet a man who lives in no one's shadow. A man whose desire to live life to the fullest has almost become an obsession. A man who has run marathons, broken land speed records, bungee jumped off one of the highest bridges in the world, and thrown himself out of a plane at a height of 10,000 feet. A man who's led cricket teams to victory internationally, completed the Rio Yacht Race at the age of 22. A man who aims to pilot a Boeing 747-400. A living example of what you can achieve if you truly put your mind to it. A man with true vision.
People often ask me, Hein, how does a blind skydiver know when he's close to the ground? It's quite simple and easy because you can feel the slack on your guide dog's leash, then you know. Now's a fairly good time to open up. I'm on my 15th guide dog puppy. If anybody can sponsor me a Jack Russell for next year's trials, I really appreciate it. But speaking of guide dogs, I own one, and I was on my way to the shops the other day, and this talented young Labrador decided to take a shortcut through the graveyard. Now, believe me, I'm not the kind of oak that walks through the graveyard every day. In fact, I avoid it at all costs, but I cannot see where I'm going. So I have to follow my dog. So as I'm walking through the graveyard, I heard this voice saying, "Mourning?" I said, no, I'm just passing through. I'm not mourning at all. Continued my little journey through the graveyard, only to hear this classical music being played backwards. Took me a while to work out Beethoven decomposing. So avoid the graveyard. So those of you that don't wander too far, I was born blind, and the only thing that I've seen before is stars. Hundreds, thousands, in fact, millions of stars. And that happened the last time I did not believe my guide dog and I walked into a tree. These days I believe the animal. This afternoon, I want to take you on a little journey. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to share with you 3 universal laws. And I believe that each and every one of you know these laws. But what I want to leave with you is the amount of light that they generated into my life since I started using them. So those who that wonder, I was born with a condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis. The short for it is LCA. It basically means my eyes cosmetically develop perfectly normally. The receptive cells on my retinas didn't develop at all. And my parents only discovered this when I was, in fact, the doctors discovered this when I was 6 months old. They broke the news to my folks, and they were quite freaked out because there were no registered blindness in our family. They didn't know what to do. They started doing some research, and they found out that back in Cape Town, about 100 kilometers north of Cape Town, is a tiny little school that actually caters for blind kids. So I was 5 years old. In fact, the second biggest traumatic experience in my life was when my parents decided that when I was 5 years old to go and drop me off in this place of unknown total darkness. Just think about it. For the first 5 years back at home, I could easily find my way to the kitchen, I could find my way to the bathroom, to my bedroom, especially my bedroom, that deep dark cave I never wanted to leave to face the bright lights of society. But Mum said, no, stay back at school, do your schoolwork. I got so lost, I didn't know where to go. I couldn't find my way to my bedroom. Some days I couldn't find my way to the bathroom in time, but at least I got an excuse. I can't see where it is, so it helped a little bit. Soon I realized all these blind oaks are walking around the school grounds making all sorts of odd noises. One would click his tongue, another one would slap his hand on his thigh. I phoned my mum, I said, "Oi, is this a school for mad children or blind children? What the hell's going on here?" I soon realized if I don't click my tongue whilst walking down the passage, all these blind buggers kept walking into me. So I started making noises to try and avoid them. They referred to me as a totally blind kid. They called me a total, which I thought was totally damn rude. And the oaks that can still see a little bit, we refer to them as twilights because they see a little bit here and a little bit there. The problem, of course, of them is they think they see a hell of a lot more than they actually can. So if they come walking down the passage, you click whatever you got, guaranteed they're going to walk all over you. I went to a very gifted school. Everybody passed matric with their eyes closed. Incredible stuff, really. So at the age of 5 years old, I knew absolutely nothing about setting goals, living a positive life, having positive affirmations. But I tell you what, at the age of 5, I developed such a want and such a need deep within me to be like all of you. I wanted to be sighted no matter what it took. And my biggest traumatic experience was not going to blind school. It was 5 weeks later, because when you went to blind school back in Cape Town or in Worcester, you had to stay for 5 weeks as a little kid, because they believed if you break the cycle sooner, it's going to be very difficult again to adapt. So after 5 weeks, I could only go home. When I got home, the group of sighted kids, the little youngsters whom I used to play with since I was in my diapers, completely, totally rejected me from their little playgroup. I'm like, what on earth happened, guys? I've been away for 5 weeks, nothing changed. They were not interested in me. I was like, how on earth? I'm standing in the driveway in front of our house thinking to myself, how will I be able to integrate myself back into this little group? These used to be my friends. And I realized they're all on their bicycles, they're cycling up and down the road in front of the house, in the driveway, and they're all on their bikes. And I'm thinking, well, I don't even own a bicycle, but the only way I can do this is get onto a bike and join them. So blind kids don't normally own bicycles. It's not the norm. But my brother had one, and I took it out the garage. The thing was twice my size. I was walking up and down the driveway with this bicycle, trying to work out a plan. How am I going to get on this thing and cycle in a straight line? Well, 2 hours later, I'm still walking with that bicycle. No plan. 3 hours later, I'm about to throw this stupid thing down, realizing the tears are running down my face. I realized I'm not going to be able to do this. And as I was about to just simply throw it down, I could hear this clickety-click noise reflecting from the gears of the bicycle against the pavement. And I realized, Hein, if you focus long enough and hard enough on that tiny little noise, you can use that feedback to cycle in a straight line. 2 weeks later, I was going up and down the driveway in a relatively straight line. 3 weeks later, I took the same bicycle out into the road. I was cycling up and down the road in front of our house. 2 months later, I challenged all those sighted kids who lived down my road and said to them, guys, do you want to dice me? I promise I'll keep my eyes closed. You know, I won't cheat. Most of them didn't take up the challenge. It's interesting that when people find out you're blind for some odd reason, they start speaking louder and louder. I don't get that. We kind of use our ears quite well. So as a teenager, things got rough. I don't know about you, but I was not going to, I felt as if the whole world is watching me all the time. And the one thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to walk down the road with a long white stick in my hand showing the world that I'm blind. So I just left it at home. I fell over pavements. I walked into trees. I made an absolute fool of myself. But you know what? Deep within me, I felt a hell of a lot better about me. And I guess I remember I was sitting in the back of our physiology class at blind school. And the only reason we had physiology, not biology, was the teachers couldn't find a strong enough microscope for the blind guys. So they said, let's stick to something you should know fairly well at the age of 15, 16, the development of the human body. Turned out to be a very interesting subject. And I'm sitting in the back of the classroom, I'm dreaming about all the ordinary things that teenage boys dream about. Bikes, cars, girls, bars, all the good stuff. And that very day in the back of the classroom, a thought crossed my mind. And that thought was something along the lines of how many kids are born with LCA? I thought, she's fine, that's a neat idea. So I sneaked out the classroom, made my way to the library to go do some research. And by the way, our physiology teacher was also blind. She never saw me leaving. It was incredible having blind teachers who could easily pull the wool over their eyes. 15 of us in the classroom, 10 would sneak out for a cigarette, and the 5 that stays behind us goes, yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. I made my way to the library. I dusted off a number of Braille books because believe me, if you try and read a Braille book under the dust, it becomes an incredibly long story. You never get to the real point. But after some research that morning, I discovered that only one, ladies and gentlemen, 1 out of 80,000 kids are born with LCA. I had a choice that day. I could either see this as the most negative thing that I've ever discovered, or I could embrace it with absolutely everything I have and say, hang on, Hein. The fact that you're different to 80,000 kids is the most unique, the most special, and the most positive thing you've ever discovered. Let me be brutally honest with you. The most difficult decision I've made to date. But the one thing that I've learned in life, my friend, if you make a decision based on your gut feeling, that feeling from deep within, do yourself a favor. Stick to that decision, because it might just be the best one you've ever made. You guys still here? She went so quiet there, I'm scared you're going to sneak out the back. Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. So I finished my matric, I finished my schooling. In fact, I did a few computer training courses, and back in the day it was a sort of command line, DOS, Echo voice software, but I felt very chuffed that I could manage the DOS environment and taught myself word processing. I can't even remember which one it was, Word Perfect or one of those back in the 80s. I'm giving away my age here. But when I finished matric, I did a few computer courses. I mailed out my CV to hundreds of companies back in Cape Town. I never got a letter back or a note back to state, well, we don't want to employ you, nothing. Not even a response. 6 months later, I'm sitting up in bed one morning, I'm thinking, but Hein, what is going to happen to you for the rest of your life? These people are not even responding to your CV. And I realized there's a big mistake. It's actually only 3 words. It reads blind since birth. So boom, I deleted it, took it off. Within a week, in fact 3 days, I got the first and second interview in Cape Town. On my way to the first interview in Cape Town in the CBD, I bumped into a blind friend of mine. It wasn't too difficult. He didn't see me coming. He said, "Hi, how are you doing, man? I haven't seen you in a while." Oh, dude, I've never seen you before, but I'm all right. He said, "Listen, Hein, I'm reading this magazine about some gentleman who wants to do the first ever transatlantic crossing with 2 blind guys on board a yacht." I'm like, "What are you reading? Did they now print the son in Braille? I suspect you're on the wrong page." He said, "Hein, this is for real." I said, "But how on earth are 2 blind guys going to pilot a yacht to Rio?" He said, "Well, I don't know, but Saturday morning, Royal Cape Yacht Club, they're going to introduce us to sailing." So I left home that morning with a very particular attitude, because the news I got is there'll be 2 blind guys on board that yacht. I decided I will be 50% of them no matter what it takes. So there we are, scanning the entire deck of the boat. They're showing us every hook, every cranny on that boat. We've got an audio compass. GPS talks to us, the longer latitude, everything is working fine. The audio gives us clear indication when we're on course, off course. 6 weeks later, I'm selected to be part of the team to pilot this yacht to Rio, on the Cape Rio Yacht Race. This was 2 months before the race. Our captain came to us and said, "Guys, I'm delivering another yacht to Port Elizabeth up on the East Coast. I'll be back in about 5 weeks. And then we finalize our training for Rio. All good, fair enough. 2 weeks into their trip, bad weather, they ran on the rocks. He drowned, and so did 2 of his crew members. At the time, I was completely terrified. These guys are going to Port Elizabeth. We want to make it to Rio." So I phoned up this blind friend of mine and said, "Did you hear this terrible news?" He said, "Yes, I did, but we cannot fall out the race at this late stage." I said, "I bet we can't." Can you imagine all the front pages of the newspapers? Headline of the Cape Times: "Yacht with blind crew first to quit due to a lack of vision." So we decided we will find somebody to get on board the yacht with us and sail to Rio. Would you believe me, for some odd reason, nobody was prepared to get on board the yacht with the 2 blind oaks. 5 days before the departure of the Cape to Rio Yacht Race, ladies and gentlemen, the only man that we could eventually convince to get on board the yacht with us happened to be a deaf guy. Exactly. Up until today, I'm convinced of the fact that he didn't listen to our questions. That's why I agreed to come on board. Imagine the chaos the first couple of days. He would point to some ropes. We would sit there and stare into space. I mean, like that. So he could lip read. So if you speak slowly and you look at him directly, that's of course if you know where he is. Otherwise, it becomes an incredibly long story. I'll tell you what, we kept that deaf oak on a very short leash all the way to Rio. Imagine losing overboard. How the hell do we park the thing on the other side? Halfway to Rio, 1,000 nautical miles on the nearest piece of land, 14 days out on the water. I was sitting on board the yacht. I was playing around with the echo sound of this tiny piece of equipment that could pretty much fit into my hand. It could effectively read up to 4 kilometers. That particular morning, simply couldn't reach the bottom of the ocean. Do you know what happened to me with 4 kilometers of water underneath me, 1,000 nautical miles to the nearest piece of land? I realized how small I am in this beautiful creation that I live in. At the same time, I also realized that I could become and I could achieve whatever I want to in this lifetime, if I'm prepared to do at least 2 things. First of all, if I'm prepared to put my mind to it. And second of all, if I'm actually prepared to work for it. In Dr. Wayne Dyer's words, and I guess I live by this particular quote, he says that if you can conceive it, actively believe in it, most importantly, act upon it, no matter what it is, my friend, you certainly will achieve that. So I got invited to speak at a entrepreneurial conference in Mumbai a few years ago, and all went well. And the next morning at breakfast, my host said to me, "Hein, I don't know if you know this, but on the outskirts of Mumbai, on the cusp of one of our major slums, a tiny little school. There's only 40 kids in the school, but what makes this particular school unique is the fact that these 40 kids happen to be deaf and blind." So my immediate reaction was, wow, how on earth do you begin to educate a child that cannot see and cannot hear? You know, my personal biggest asset, I believe, is my sense of hearing. Be able to use it to navigate the world with 0 light. And I'm like, add the fact that you cannot hear, how on earth? So I said, "Well, please, would you arrange a visit to the school?" He said, "Hein, of course." So the next morning off we went, and in the car he said to me, "Yo, Hein, these guys asked me at the school if you don't mind to just chat to the kids for say 5 or 10 minutes. I'm thinking, dude, I probably need 2 hours. These guys can't hear and see. 5 minutes is not going to be enough. But I don't know. I'm a bit scared, but I'm not saying anything. So we arrive at the school. They introduced me to probably one of the most phenomenal gentlemen I've ever met. He's sitting behind an ordinary computer, ordinary looking computer. He's completely deaf, completely blind. He's been at the school for 35 years himself. He's now a qualified teacher. He's got a master's degree in education in the Indian schooling system, which is a fairly competitive one. So he's sitting in front of this computer with a 17-inch monitor in front of him for your benefit, that you can look over his shoulder whilst he's typing on a normal touch type ASDF keyboard. The critical success factor is the fact that he's got a tiny little braille display below his fingers that basically projects in braille, line for line, what's happening on the screen. So I put my fingers on the braille display because I can read it. He types a question, he says hello, we swap hands. I can type, he can read. What do you think was my first question to him? How on earth did you achieve a master's degree in education? You are completely deaf and blind. Please enlighten me. I said, Hein, the very first thing you've got to understand of a deaf-blind person's world, it begins and ends as far as his or her fingers can reach. And within that, we have to educate. But I said, how on earth did you do this? How did you get to this? And I'm also like, how am I going to speak to the kids? He said, whoa, we developed a tactile sign language. The kids physically hold hands, and by moving their fingers, they can feel what the other person is saying. I said, but that doesn't solve my problem. How would they know what I'm saying? He said, well, there's 40 of them the first guy can hear. They're all holding hands. Number 1 tells a story to number 2, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. So it goes down the line. It takes 13.5 minutes for the last guy to catch the joke. But, he who laughs last in life, even at the deaf-blind school in Mumbai, laughs the longest. That's the way it works. I was so profoundly moved by that experience. Ladies and gentlemen, people often ask me, Hein, if you had a choice, remember I never had one, but if you had a choice, would you want to be blind or would you want to be deaf? I can honestly not answer you, but I can tell you this. The one thing that I do know is I do not want to be deaf and blind. And that, my friend, brings me to the first universal law that I want to leave with you today. It's the law of appreciation. Appreciate what you've got, because I promise you, there are hundreds, thousands, in fact, millions of people out there that are less fortunate than you are. And remember, the things, me and you, the things we take for granted, someone else right now is praying for. So of course, when I was 5 years old, I did not have the capacity to begin even to understand what kind of trauma my parents went through dropping me off at the school for the blind. Today, of course, I realize it was very difficult for them, and the best thing they could have done for me. My little girl being almost 2 years old now, it is impossible for me to even to begin to think to send her away to a boarding school, but her eyes are perfectly fine, so we don't need to do that. But when I got to blind school, in fact, my blindness had a huge impact on our family. My dad was a banker. In fact, he was offered a directorship up here in Johannesburg back in 1978 when I went to school. And he had to quit his career because he wasn't going to move to Johannesburg 1,500 kilometers away from Cape Town. So he decided that he will try something new to be closer to where I'm in boarding house, 100 kilometers away. And Dad entered the car industry. So every weekend that I got home, there was a different car in our driveway. And like any youngster, I became absolutely fascinated by these cars. Soon I knew 2 pedals has got to be automatic. 3, it's got to be manual. Flickers on the right hand side of the column, German car. On the left, American car. I knew everything about cars. In fact, I was 9 when I realized, Hein, guess what? You will never, ever, ever be able to drive one of these. And if you do it, it's going to be incredibly illegal to do so. I never, ever, ever allowed that dream to die. In 2005, I changed that a little slightly. Now, not only do I want to drive a fast car, I will become the fastest blind man on 4 wheels. Let me show you what happened on the runway in Mabatu when I jumped in behind the wheel of a rather fast Maserati.
It's a chilly spring morning on this runway here in Mabatu, and for 33-year-old Cape Townian Hein Wagner, it's the stuff that dreams are made of, because today he's attempting to break a land speed record.
Would you say that this is the biggest challenge you've undertaken so far?
Most daring, the most scary, and the most hair-raising.
So, Hein decided to attempt the blind land speed record. All he needed now was a car that could do close to 300 kilometers an hour. And that's where Maserati came to the party, offering 1.25 million rands worth of car to a man who's not even allowed to drive on the streets of Cape Town. It took a couple of strong espressos to get the Viglietti brothers firmly behind their novice driver. But nothing would tempt an insurance company to come on board.
Unfortunately, up until this stage, we haven't found an insurance company that's brave enough and bold enough to come to the party and insure us. But, you know, the lower the risk, the lower the return.
Aren't you worried about the risk?
It does make you nervous. My brother went with him in the car yesterday, and you don't realize it until your pants are in the car on the seat next to him. You do get nervous.
In Hein's world, getting to know the car is literally a hands-on experience. It's all about touch as he feels his way around a car he can only imagine. Hein, did it take you a while to get to know where everything is?
Yes, it did. However, the car's got such an easy design. I mean, if you look at the paddle shifts here on the steering column where you're gearing up and down, you know, it's a very comfortable and a very easy design.
Does it help things for you having the gear shift on the steering wheel?
Oh, definitely. I never ever have to remove my hands from the steering wheel, which could really disrupt my rhythm.
For Hein to take the title, he needs to beat the speed of 223 kilometers per hour, which was made by a blind British bank manager, Mike Newman, in 2003. Blind high-speed driving is a team effort. The risk to the person behind the wheel is immense, but that person also needs a navigator sitting beside him, and that person needs some convincing.
I do get some very strange phone calls from time to time.
Ray Wakefield's life revolves around land speed record breaking, but Hein's request for help was the first of its kind.
When he told me that he wanted to be the world's fastest blind driver, it was in such a way that I thought, no, this man is genuine.
It's an early start for Ray and Hein on the day of the race. It's vital they put in some last-minute training, as they have had only 5 hours practice. That's the only 5 hours Hein has driven in his entire life. So the team seems a little tense. That seemed like a pretty good run. What speed did you guys get to?
I must concentrate on where we're going. I really cannot look at the speedometer.
Explain to us what exactly is your role in the car.
As he is driving, I have to tell him how far to go to the left or the right in order to keep the car on a relatively straight line. It's no good just saying left a bit, right a bit. Obviously, we have to give values to this.
They've devised a system of numbers where 5 is dead center, the position Hein must aim for. If he veers to the left, Ray calls numbers below 5, and to the right, he calls numbers above 5.
We got up to, what was that?
We did, we entered the measured kilometre at 240, we exited at 260, very roughly.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he was so straight and level and everything else that I could take my eye off the road and look at the clocks, which is a good thing.
At 3 in the afternoon, it's finally time. As the track is cleared and the helicopter hovers, it's now up to Hein and Ray.
Everything is fine. You are on 5. Wheel is straight. On your time, and I'm ready to go. And rolling well. 4-9. 9, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 9, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 1.
This is a Guinness World Record attempt. 3 1-kilometer runs are allowed over a 4.5-kilometer track, but it's the speed of the last run that will go down in the books.
Mark and decelerate 5, 5, 5. Go, 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 go. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Put hard down. 5, 5, 5.
It took only a minute, but it was a minute of pure magic for Hein Wagner
Slow down. Stop, stop, stop.
to become the fastest blind driver in the world. he reached 269.2 kilometers per hour, way above the previous record.
We got it.
Well done, Ray.
We got it, pal.
269.2.
What a great lad, hey? What a super guy. It's a world record and it's held by South African, and I'm proud to be South African, especially Ra.
I needed somebody that was brave enough to jump into the passenger seat and explain to me where to go. Well, that turned out to be the most difficult thing to find. My friend said to me, Hein, we like you, but certainly not that much. So I'm on my best friend Google, and I'm looking for some support online, and nothing's. I couldn't find so much except for the record. Obviously, this was a 223. So I thought, well, let me get a car first, and then we'll see where we go from there. So I phoned up the Ferrari Maserati importers in Cape Town. I went straight through to the CEO. I said, well, my name is Hein. I'm blind. I want to become the fastest blind man on 4 wheels. Do you have a car that could exceed 250? To which he responded, but I've got plenty. I said, okay, but I just need one for the world blind land speed record. Would you sponsor me one? He said, of course. I got such a fright when the man said yes, I just put the phone down. So the next morning I called him back. I said, I guess we need to sign a contract. He said, what for? I said, for the world blind land speed record. Just yesterday you promised me you're going to sponsor me a car. He said, yeah, my friend, yesterday was the 1st of April. I thought you were kidding.